Hello, hello to another short story. Today I have a very special story for you. Is it a magical and slightly mysterious story? Absolutely. Is it a weird fiction story? Absolutely not. We're gonna plunge into the darkness again soon. I have a story for you that will hit you like a brick. Next week. This week, it's an original story by none other than Nicholas Leonard, an incredibly talented contemporary author. This story, titled Starry Bride, is one of those stories I fell instantly in love with, and I hope you will too. The name of this story's protagonist is Rylan, and Rylan is Canadian. And if you want to listen to this story narrated in a genuine Canadian accent after you listened to my version, of course, then head on over to Callipolis Radio, because Rylan, what a coincidence, Rylan of Callipolis Radio happens to be Canadian, and he did a tremendous job. And without giving you any spoilers, this story, Starry Bride, also features a character named Pete, and Pete in the story has a German accent, and coincidentally, I happen to be very good at German accents. I've been told. So there's that. And if you want to listen to a whole novel written by Nicholas, you can head on over to Gothic Storytelling, who just finished narrating one whole Nick Leonard novel. You can find the links to all I mentioned and more in the description. There are links to Callipolis Radio, who not only narrated Starry Bride, to Gothic Storytelling, who also has quite a bunch of Nick's poetry and stories on her channel, and to a channel with the name of Naya Nomiku, who also read a lot written by Nick. And if all fails, you can also check out my short story playlist and my poetry playlist, because I have also quite some of Nick's work on my channel. What else? I think it's enough talking. Let's do some, narrating, which is also talking, basically. Here is Starry Bride by Nicholas Leonard. My name is Rylan Callender. I'm a technician from Canada, and I'd like to tell you about the strangest wedding that I have ever been to. Last year, I decided to drive down to Salem, Massachusetts at the end of December. It was my second day on the road, and I was crossing through New Hampshire when destiny waved its hand and made me hungry enough to pull into a Chinese restaurant on the side of the road. I had been driving down Route 16 for quite a while. All the white-haired pine trees seemed stoic in the height when I stepped out of the car. A mountain was in the distance, watching over the pine trees like a Titan grandfather. I was a tick in his millions of grandchildren. The whole scenery felt wild and heroic and serene, white and green. I realized just how out of place I was when I entered. There were empty tables, but the bar was alive with people much older than myself. They were laughing and having their own conversations while a neglected television played videos of cats and dogs. These people, old as they were, dressed as if they were still working. Dirt had been frosted into the skin on their hands, but it was there like a reward, a medal to be worn on the hand. It had been so cold outside that my breath remained visible in its rhythmic spurts as I stood there and surveyed the crowd. I rubbed my hands together, which suddenly seemed so much cleaner than before, and I quietly thanked myself for deciding to wear my striped sweater vest that morning. When my eyes went to search for a bartender or waiter, and when it seemed that the bar and restaurant itself was run by the elderly patrons, I went to walk back outside until I noticed a man sitting alone at the other side of the bar. His hair was not silver but dirty blonde. He was wearing a white and blue anole sweater. His skin was tanned from probably working outside, and I imagined he would be like the elderly patrons in a couple of decades. He just looked beyond the bar counter and beyond the bottle of Coors he had and stared at a sink that was beside a fridge of drinks. The elderly crowd noticed me when I walked towards the bar, and they all waved at me. I felt I was being knighted by them somehow, and there was a gravitational urge to sit with them, but I sat with the lonely man instead. "Anything good here?" I said as I sat down. He looked at me, shocked that someone had pulled him out of his trance. "Beer," he said. "Get the crab rangoons!" a woman shouted from the other side of the bar. "Sue's been filling and folding them all day." I gave that crowd a thankful nod and thought I would honor my new knighthood by getting crab rangoons when somebody showed up to serve me. "Can I get you a beer?" the young man beside me asked. "No, I'll just wait," I said, folding my arms on the counter. The man returned to looking at nothing, and I began regretting having stayed after all. I ordered a glass of wine when my crab rangoons came, which caused the young man's brow to furrow. I offered him a crab rangoon, but he declined, most likely out of politeness. "I'm getting married tonight," he said after a swig of beer. A whisper sped through the elderly party. I looked at him. "You are?" I asked. He was nodding. "I am." "Aren't weddings usually earlier in the day?" I asked. "It's gonna be a nighttime wedding," he explained before offering his hand. "Name's Pluto." "Like Mickey's dog?" "Like the planet," he said with more boredom than nonchalantness. We finished shaking hands. "Well," I said, "tell me about her." He sighed, smiled, and looked at nothing again. And I finally saw he had been thinking of her instead of actually looking at nothing. "She's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. She takes my breath away." I was reminded of how my breath was coming out in cloudy spurts at the doorway. I remember the night I asked her to marry me, looking up at her. "How did you two meet?" I asked. "When I was a child," Pluto said, looking up at the ceiling of the bar and probably reminiscing about being down on one knee. "I saw her first outside my uncle's trailer one summer night. I had been frog hunting with my little cousins in a pond, and we were marveling at all the fireflies. But my attention slowly turned when I saw her." He looked down from the ceiling and at me. He was smiling a calm smile that made me feel comfortable, and I knew that Pluto had the same knighthood I had received when I entered. "You might not believe me," he continued, his hands hugging his bottle. "But one winter night, years later, I saw her right outside my house looking at me the way she did that night outside my uncle's." "You recognized each other?" I asked. "How did she find you?" He was shaking his head in wonderful disbelief. "We recognized each other straight away. I don't know how she found me. I don't know how she knew to stand outside of my house and wait for me, but she did. I turned and addressed the elderly party. Are any of you guys coming to the wedding? That's our bedtime, one of the elders shouted, and the others laughed. Do you want to come? Pluto asked me. Why the heck not? I shrugged and sipped my wine. Wait until you see her. He was looking into nothing again, where his bride was framed. She's gorgeous. The most beautiful thing I ever saw. Do you like freckles? Sure, I said. She's got freckles all over. He exhaled in a confession of cosmic intimacy, and then his voice returned out of the nothingness he framed his bride. She has a dark countenance. Like a goth girl? I inquired, half jokingly, half serious. He nodded, chuckling wonderfully. Like a goth girl. There was another spell of silence. And I swear, she is so elegant, it's like the whole forest outside my house is her gown, he said. She owns the night, all of it, and I belong to her. I always begged to belong to her. Every night I begged, and now, tonight, I will. You sure she wouldn't mind me coming? She wouldn't mind at all. Perfect, I said, bringing the glass of wine to my lips. Pluto lived in an association 5 minutes away. His home was a log home with a large dirt driveway and a wall of pine trees around it. The driveway was lined with rugged banks of snow. The log home had a porch that was loaded with firewood and cluttered with various outdoor tools. We waited inside while he continued musing on his bride's unbelievable beauty. Little did I know. After he got changed into a turquoise suit, he offered me a drink, but I declined. I'll wait for the reception, I said, to which he said, whilst doing a jig and making himself a drink jubilantly, I'm so nervous. I might have to. You'll be fine, I said in a matter-of-fact whine. He poured a splash of whiskey into a glass, which was followed by 2 parts of apple juice. I think he mulled over the idea of love itself after he tossed a sip into his mouth. Whatever conclusion he came to was where the romance of Spanish guitars open up the heart, and his heart was so open that the rest of him was closed, thus his looking into nothingness again. Watching a man sip on apple juice and whiskey before his wedding might actually be more interesting than drinking the whiskey itself. How thoughtful he looked. It made me anxious as to what his bride would be like. He had spoken so much of her beauty, but what would she look like? What would she be like? I wondered what kind of voice she would have during the vows. Raspy and sultry, or soft and warm, or soft and cold. I hoped it was going to be soft and cold, because the snow outside was just so hard and cold that such a voice would have tied the night together in a beauty to match the ceremony. When the car headlights swept in and out of the kitchen, I thought it was the bride, but it was just the priest. I watched him bridge the distance between his car and the front door, leaving clouds of breath in his wake as he avoided patches of ice in the driveway. It was an ice age night that used to belong to prehistoric man, but now it was ventured by the Catholic. Don't you have motion lights? I inquired while watching the priest try not to slip on the ice. I do. Shouldn't we turn them on? I asked. to which he answered, "No, leave them off tonight, or else she won't come." The door opened. "Father Pete," Pluto cheered, a little loosened but nowhere near drunk from his drink. The priest wore a black cassock with a white necktie. He had salt and pepper stubble on his face that culminated in a neat beard around his mouth. He shook Pluto's hand, and I introduced myself to him. "I understand the bride has not arrived," Father Pete said. He had a German accent and joyous eyes. He told me about an improv class he volunteered at while Pluto applied some extra cologne to his underjaw in another room. Pluto re-emerged. "I'm ready," he said in a deep breath. "Is she here?" Father Pete asked. "I didn't see her. Is she outside?" "Has she been outside for long?" I asked worriedly. Pluto had spoken of her so much that I had come to care for her, and I was worried about how cold it was outside. "Gentlemen," Pluto said, holding the collar of his turquoise suit, "she's been outside all along." Father Pete and I exchanged a similar look of confusion. Pluto peeked out the window and shot to the side with his hand on the doorknob. Cold air came in and Pluto went out. Father Pete and I got up from our seats and shuffled towards the doorway, which he left open. He hadn't been concerned about the ice because he was already at the end of the dirt driveway. We watched him stand, not the way a groom would stand, but stand the way someone might while looking up at an alien spaceship. It made both the priest and I a little wary to step outside, but a wedding needs a priest and a witness. I looked around when we came outside. "Where is she?" I asked, looking from side to side, looking into the trees and down the hill of the dirt road. "She's here," Pluto said, while looking up. We watched his posture relax backwards as if he was catching the weight of something truly great. "She's here," he cheered. "She actually came." I walked around the priest, feeling but not letting the ice sweep me off my feet. I was looking up, too, and I saw what had filled the nothingness in which Pluto looked into. The stars. The priest hadn't caught on yet. He was still looking around. "Where is the bride?" he asked. In this moment, between Pluto awing at his bride and the priest looking side to side in search of a woman, I noticed a fog coming off the snow. It was warming up, and that was causing all of the snow to become a ghost a little too quickly. The fog was rising and obscuring the woods behind the trees, and it made the log home and dirt road seem even more isolated. I watched Pluto turn in place, his balance not threatened by his drinking, but by the ice. I could see his breath coming out of his smile when he looked up at the stars. So I decided to look up at the stars too, and it was just as beautiful as he had described it all along. When I tell you that it was as if the world opened up when it wasn't supposed to, I mean it in the most profound way possible. I saw the freckles of outer space, all out of place and in their places perfectly. All the stars that never formed shapes pretty enough to be considered constellations, danced away, assisting one another in pirouettes and leaps and all sorts of dance moves that would have been seen in ballrooms and in hay barns. The sky had never felt so big. I felt wonderfully small. I felt like a little kid at a wedding whose parents urged him to be quiet beforehand. And with every cloud that fled my lungs and jumped into the arms of the night, I became jealous of Pluto. Believe it or not, but I felt that the starry night sky accepted every one of my frost-wrapped breaths the way a bride reaches down to accept all the meaningless lilies and roses of confused children who only knew to give her flowers because she was ready. I wish I could remember exactly how the ceremony went. What I do remember is how Father Pete entertained Pluto, taking out his little book and reading from it while Pluto really contained himself and stood beside him with his hands clasped. He was looking up dotingly all the while the priest spoke. None of Father Pete's improv classes could have prepared him for this. What love was in Pluto's eyes while he looked up at the stars. What peace, what contentness possessed him. You can choose to not believe me, but I would have sworn I saw a shooting star falling after Father Pete asked, "Do you?" He hesitated and looked up at the stars. "Take Pluto to be your lawful wedded husband?" He turned to Pluto. "And do you, Pluto, take this to be your lawful wedded wife?" "I do," he said, with humble victory. I looked at Pluto, who still looked up at the stars, and I realized that he might have been mistaking that wonderful smallness for love. And I was jealous of him for it. They were the greatest couple I have ever seen, and no couple has compared since. Pluto standing there, handsome in his smallness, and the stars prolific in their reach. It turned the cold howl into something that howled on my soul. I think the priest began to feel it too. Either this young man's delusions were so powerful and great that we began to believe in them too, or he had actually just married the entire night sky. It was finished. Father Pete didn't bother saying, "You may now kiss the bride," because we all knew it was impossible. That didn't matter to Pluto, though. He did his tractor beam pose again and spread his arms as if catching and introducing the stars. I stood there and watched the priest hold the book as if it was protecting him from something. The fog was coming out of all the banks of snow along the trees while Pluto stretched back and accepted the stars. The cold was kissing his face, his disembodied wife everywhere, in the fog and in the stars. It wasn't just the stars. It was a goddess. And this nondescript stranger I had met just hours earlier was now their romantic property. And that is such a wonderful thing to be.